You're good.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Chris. It is our federal call on the first Monday of the month every month. Looks like a lighter than normal attendance today, probably for a number of reasons, including but not limited to tomorrow's election. Or either that or they're all celebrating Zamillo's birthday. I'm not sure. It's one or the other.
I doubt it.
That may be, we can't take Columbus Day off anymore, but we can take Zamillo's birthday off instead. I think Columbus Day is now Indigenous Peoples Day. So Jim's birthday will be something for us all to celebrate. So happy birthday, Jim, number one.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be 60?
Yeah, I wish. I'd like to go back 14 years. Believe me.
With us today, per normal, is our cast of characters from FFLGuard, including the client relations team, my brother Brian up at our cabin up on the lake, and that is not high contrast behind him. That is actually snow in upstate New York. We've got there on our little stone wall, and then we've got down south Avis in her office. Hi. Our heavy coordinator of all things business related, Hank Yasek, out in the middle of the country, doing his prepping for when the Civil War begins sometime tomorrow night. I see we've got Michael coming to us from Williamsburg, Virginia, and Rick out there in West Virginia, out by Winchester. And then, of course, the birthday boy, Jim Z, down in Maryland. Thank you all for joining us. I won't belabor today's call. We all are very busy these days, and I understand that. I wanted to just give you my two quick bullet points. Oh, and I'm here in Staten Island. Hi, on my couch. That's what I'm doing. My two quick bullet points are, obviously, it's November 2nd. You are now using new Form 4473, Forms 4473. There is no going back to the old forms. There should not be any old forms dated November 1st or later. So you're just handing an IOIO violation. Get rid of those old forms. I see Pat Nelson. Hi, I see you on the phone on the call. You can have my forms. I'm sure you got my. I'm not doing any 4473s. You can have my forms. But that's very important that we get rid of the old forms and get on with the new forms. And at the same time, we have updated our training to reflect the new Form 4473. So in our training and at the 100 level online, you can access the quick 4473 review, which is an always free quick review of the 4473 test. Then at the 200 level, there is a more in-depth 4473, new 4473 teaching session conducted by Jim and Brian with me just being the in-between guy saying hi. And that is usually pay-per-view or pay to play. However, for the first 90 days, is it 90 days, Brian? So for the first
January 31st. Yep, January 31st.
January 31st, it's open to everybody for free. So train your employees on it. Utilize the free. Is there a passcode, Brian, or is it just open?
The passcode is, I feel like Jim Carrey in Cable Guy. The password is 2020 4473 2020 4473. But in the solution of the week that came out on Friday, there is a link right to it, so you can send it to your employees. And then there's also step-by-step instructions on how to register and take it.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. And I'm sure we'll just keep repeating that every Friday.
Yeah.
When we send it out. Okay. So to that end, my two pieces of input are new 4473s and new 4473 training. What I'd like to do is grab Hank and punt over to him, or at least hand the baton to him, to talk a little bit about what we were talking on before the call, not my information, but yours, about what your latest writing for NSSF indicated about your thoughts on the election, and also other interesting items like foot traffic in your store, even though you probably don't have much merchandise. And anybody, and before I forget, someone, I think maybe it's Jim or Rick or Brian, or someone's going to talk about how everyone's trying to get into the ammo game and where that's going. Or Hank, maybe that's going to be you, but the ammo game
start off on that,
came up.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on that ammo game real quick. So I am getting a deluge of calls from folks just wanting to say, hey, Hank, can you give me any coaching on how to get into that game? And I just worry for a lot of folks, they don't have the full visibility of what they're jumping into from a product liability perspective. You know, even something as simple as, what do you name your ammo? Do you name it the same as your house brand, or is it a totally different brand? And there's a whole bunch of sticky wickets that you can get caught up in if you don't think through it and have the advice of some people with expertise around all of the aspects of bringing ammo in house. You know, FET taxes, the whole rat's nest of issues and complications. Plus the fact that even the ammo manufacturers right now, you know, there's always that one piece. Is it the primer? Is it the case? Is it the powder? Whatever it is you can't get right now prevents you from being able to actually manufacture the stuff. So we're fully into that environment as well too. But that's all I've got to really throw at that. But the other big one that I want to sort of talk to is, I see a lot of folks out there right now, you know, going, hey, I'm not seeing an increase in flow of inventory. You know, my demand is outstripping my supply right now. And they're just kind of battening down the hatches for this election without thinking of one very specific thing. And that is, if this election is even remotely close, either way, it will become a contested election. And one thing that we know in this industry more than anybody is that times of national uncertainty equate to an increased interest in our industry from a product perspective. Well, you're not going to get more product, but what does that mean for my store? You're going to have a lot more people wanting to come into your store between now and whenever the presidency is certified, which may be as long as December 14th. So having a strategy, like sit down with your teams tonight, or at the worst tomorrow, and say, how are we going to manage extra traffic, particularly in states that have capacity restrictions in place? You will very likely see a wave of customer interest over the next week beyond what it's been running up to your stores right now. And if you don't have a customer flow management strategy, I mean, do you go back to what it was at the beginning of COVID, where it was, you know, texting people to wait out in the parking lot and then letting them into the store when, you know, when it's their turn and things along those lines? It's going to be really important to have that strategy in place before you're in the middle of it post-election. That's my big advocacy right now with the election being imminent to everyone, is get that strategy in place and communicated to your teams on how you're going to manage the human level of interest in your store over the next week and possibly over the next month.
Hank, have you seen anything on reloaded ammo? I know I was getting some inquiries about that, and should a client have to be worried in any way or get some sort of a indemnity clause or something like that with regard to selling reloaded ammo? Does that come up at all? Have you seen that?
So when you say selling it from a third party or selling it because it's house made?
No, if they're buying it from a manufacturer that's selling reloaded ammo.
I mean, there's usually, anytime I've dealt with it in the past, there's always a contract that clearly states that whoever's making it has product liability insurance and all of those kind of stepwise pieces to say, hey, I'm not the guy holding the bag if this gun harms someone or blows up a firearm. Because if they don't have product liability insurance on their remanufactured ammo, then yeah, you as a retailer are the one left holding the bag on any bodily harm or anything along those lines.
Okay, good to know.
Thank you, Hank. Appreciate that input. Jim, would you have anything that you're seeing, particularly you had a little uptick on the help desk last month. I saw you were a little bit more involved than in the month previous. So anything come to mind or jump to your attention that is giving you pause?
No, I mean, Brian may have more on that. What I wanted to do, because it is, you know, the requirement to use the new form now, we had several questions that we posed to ATF, and I'm certain that we put the information out to everybody, the answers, but I wanted to just take a couple minutes and go over those answers with everybody, just so we're on the same page, because it is different than what it used to be with regard to the new form. If the transfer doesn't go through, you do not change that number in item 6 to 0. The old form, you change it to 0. The new one, you don't. If you have pawn transfers and you have the person that's acquiring them is purchasing so many that the information can't fit in space 7, they want you to just write in there, see item 32, and then put the information there. If the person is active duty military and lives off base in the same state as the base, only their current address is shown. There's no need to show the base address. If you remember, the old form had you putting both addresses in that area. We have a question that's still pending with ATF with regard to military. As you know, the PCS orders clearly establish state of residence, but that's different than address. So let's say you have a person that's living off base in the same state as the base. Their address is living off base, and the identification requirement is that it doesn't say the ID document has to marry to state of residency. It says it has to marry to your address. So the question that we have posed to ATF, and it's still pending, is if a person's living off base in state, do they have to have identification that supports that address that's now listed in, oh, criminy, I forget the number. It used to be 2, I forget what it is now. You know, where they put their address in. So that one is still pending with them. They've granted permission for a couple autofills, you know, for software people, because all the guns are now in Section A. So when you get to category of firearm, that can be an autofill. When you get into the number of guns being transferred, that can be an autofill. They did come out in writing too and say that once the buyer certifies to their answers on the device that they're using, be it an iPad or whatever, that they can't go back and change their answers, that certification lasts. So the only thing you can do at that point is when you print the form out, they can do their manual changes there. But again, great caution on the prohibiting questions. You know, are you a fugitive and things like that, because the form is very clear. If they answer in that manner, that the sale should immediately stop. You don't run the background check. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we saw this. You know how we recommend if someone has a carry permit that you still run the background check? So if you run the background check and you put that information on the 4473, then you have to follow the background check rules, which means that you wait for a proceed, or you wait until the 3 days, though the waiting period has lapsed before you transfer. So even though they have a carry permit, if you run that background check, you can't, and you get a delay, you can't immediately transfer the firearm to that person. You're going to have to wait for the proceed, or wait until the appropriate time frame changes. ATF is citing violations for that. So if you are running the background check, only the background check information would go in that area. And then where normally you'd fill in the CCW information right in that NICS area, you don't put it there. You put it in item 32 because it's just additional information. You're bound by the rules of the NICS background check. That has it.
Okay, so you know, another thing that's been a sort of a hot topic recently, Jim, that you're going to want to chime in on, and I was just reviewing some of the back and forth chatter this morning among us, and I'm going to hand the baton to Rick to talk about. But you know, this arm brace issue that has become one on everyone's brain, and the misinterpretation of how ATF is treating it. Are all arm braces banned? What is going on with arm braces? Who's being recalled? Who's in charge of what? So arm braces have been a hot topic, and both Rick and you have had advice on it. Rick, let's start with you. Tell us what's going on with arm braces and why it is that they've become an issue and what the issue actually is.
Okay. I'm going to tell you the whole long, dirty story because I'm working with all of the people that are having arm brace issues. Fostech, Kalashnikov, Honey Badger, Q, working with them now. What happened was, and I'm going to go a little bit in history, so make sure everybody is clear on this. When they passed the arm brace, ATF had 30 years of history of denying it. And they decided on behalf of a disabled veteran, they were going to approve an arm brace to use to handle the larger rifle type handguns, ARs, AKs. And they had no criteria. They just said, this is an arm brace, go forth and use it on your gun. So they had a series of letters of, can you use it as a stock or not? And the 2 letters were contradictory. And then a letter came from headquarters signed by Marvin Richardson, the assistant director at the time. It says, no matter what, this is an arm brace. If you use it as a stock, it doesn't turn it into a short barrel rifle. But if you look into depth into that letter, it also says that a short barrel rifle is an NFA firearm. And then if you're going to make a short barrel rifle, you need to do it on a Form 1. So Alex Bosco from SP Tactical is the main manufacturer of these. And he started making them and fighting with ATF because he started making them and wasn't getting them approved. So he would make them look like the other ones that he made and didn't get them approved. So ATF kind of came down on him. And so he hired a former acting director, Mike Sullivan, and other people to help him fight this battle. So then the Kellen Wright case came out where I testified against it. And out of the clear blue, ATF now created a length of pull ruling, which there had never been one in the past. But they brought it out for the Kellen Wright case, and of course, ATF lost the case. So I testified against ATF. There was nothing about length of pull, but ATF decided that that was a new standard, length of pull. So if your arm brace was longer than 13.5 inches from your trigger to the back of the arm brace, it was automatically a stock, no matter what else. Now, you can't find this anywhere. Now, what I'm telling you is nowhere in writing, unless you submitted a stock. So then they came up with another couple of attributes. When you put the arm brace in your arm, the sights must align with your shooting eye, because people are putting arm braces together, and I have a couple right here. They're putting an arm brace together, and when you put it around your arm, as you can see, I cannot even line up a sight. It's pointing in the sky. So they were just putting arm braces together because the only real reason they were making them was somebody using them as a stock. So they went after Fostech first and did a major recall because they used the SB3 tactical stock. SP Tactical had never gotten that approved. They just made it identical, supposedly, to their other ones. So ATF went after Fostech first. So then they went after Kalashnikov. And Kalashnikov did the same thing. They used the SB3 Tactical. They did not have an ATF letter. In the meantime, Alex Bosco has hired Wiley Reen, which is a very big law firm, politically connected in DC. And they went to DOJ, and DOJ wrote a regulation that says, ATF, you cannot respond to this, this, and this. So ATF quit looking at bump stocks. They just stopped because the regulation says we can't do this. So there's people with arm braces in ATF that have been there for 18 months waiting for review. So now ATF can't do anything that DOJ says they can't do. So they said, okay, once they're sold, we can go after it in a criminal manner because now it's totally different. So that's how Honey Badger and Q came under. So they went after Q and they've charged them with using an arm brace that is a stock. So, I mean, this has gotten very political. Lindsey Graham is now even involved in this. So they go back to DOJ. DOJ does a cease and desist for 60 days on the Boston field office for doing the recall on Honey Badger. So right now, ATF is not looking at any arm braces, period. There's no analysis on arm braces. There's right now, no one knows what's going to happen after the election. Of course, if President Trump is elected, then the people fighting using DOJ are going to have a good fight. If Biden gets elected, I can venture to say we're going to have a new attorney general in pretty quick, and then arm braces are going to become stocks overnight. So right now, that's kind of where it is. If you have an arm brace that was never evaluated, and when the 60 days is over, ATF may be sending agents out to you to look at these arm braces and say, show me your ATF approval letter. ATF has still not written any criteria like 1 through 5. It must be so long, it must be this color, it must be this weight, and they refuse to do it. And they said they don't have to because the regulation the DOJ wrote means they don't have to, they can't do certain things. So right now ATF is doing that. I guess my response to you is if you have one and you don't know what it is, whether it's approved or not, if the manufacturer didn't send you an approval letter, then it's out there. After the 60 days have lapsed, ATF may be forced to write criteria, or they may just start sending you letters to recall all of them. So that's kind of it in as quick as I could tell about it, but cover all aspects of it to include the politics of it.
Yeah, that wasn't quick, but that was thorough.
It was very thorough. Yeah.
Very thorough. Jim, before I say something, do you have something to add?
No, just that, Rick touched on many important points. One of them being like ATF is barred from doing evaluations on, I think the word is attachments to firearms, which would be the arm brace, but they will do evaluations if you have the firearm and the arm brace is on it. And I think that's where the problem is, that you have companies who are marketing them and they're not sending that complete package into ATF.
That's incorrect.
Pardon?
I worked on a product for Edgar Dominique, former, as you know, Marvin, former assistant director and acting director, and he has an arm brace with the rifle into ATF now for 13 months. And
I'm not saying it's quick. I'm just saying that.
No, he's talking to Regina on a weekly basis, and she said, we are not looking at these until DOJ makes their opinion. So if you send it in there until DOJ makes an opinion, it's going to set. So the best thing to do is wait till the 60 days lapse. And DOJ is going to either come out and say all arm braces are arm braces if they fit this criteria, because they're talking to Wiley Reed and we're giving them parameters of what an arm brace should be. And that's, so my recommendation, if you want to send it in, you can send it in with the gun, but I wouldn't send anything in because we know what's been sitting there for 13 months, 18 months, and the opinion's going to come out as soon as this lapse is over.
I mean, I can only comment that, and I don't mean to disagree with you, Rick, so don't take it that way. I spoke to a high level at ATF this past week, and he told me that only 2 companies have formally sent in their firearm with the arm brace for evaluation. This is someone who's very much on top of the Wiley case, and that's where the problem resides. I agree with you completely that if you send it in, it's FTD is like a black hole. It's just stuff goes in there and no light comes out. So I don't know what the answer is other than the fact that, like you say, they won't evaluate them individually. The word I got was they will evaluate them if you send them in as a unit. But again, you have the time factor there, the time constraint.
So The only thing that is consistent in ATF, as we've said for 12 years, is they're inconsistent. That doesn't surprise me that our two subject matter experts have two varying sources within that say different things. But that being said, Jeff Perry brought up a good question to me on the side, which is, and Brian, I think you know the answer to this. Do we have like a help desk solution that lays out what Rick and Jim just laid out somewhere? Where, I mean, I know I've read it internally, but I don't know.
Yeah, not yet. We don't have anything formal in there yet as to a response on this. So I do want to talk to Rick and Jim about that. I know that Hilda, who's on our call from out in Arizona, she's one of that has a question about it. So we need to finalize something and put it out.
Right, so today, after our California call, if Jim and Rick, you guys are available this afternoon, let's just caucus really quickly and come up with a singular answer, even if it goes in different directions. And then by the time Friday comes around, we can post it as our help desk question of the week response, help desk solution of the week, and we can give people at least a little bit of guidance. How's that?
Let me just throw one question too to that, and maybe for this audience. Is the general language that's being expressed out there a recall of these parts, a grandfathering of these parts, or a sort of a register them, but you're going to have some sort of amnesty period? What's the general talk on that angle? Should it go down the road?
I just worked with Kalashnikov, and Kalashnikov tried to use the ATF orders to just remove the offending feature, and they've had to recall all of the firearms because ATF's wording is you intentionally built this rifle with a stock, even though they had no knowledge, but that's so that they had accidentally put an arm brace, like an individual. I accidentally put this on a firearm, and I didn't know that ATF had classified as a stock. ATF might say, okay, just remove the stock and put it back in your pistol configuration. But because they were a manufacturer, ATF is holding them to a higher standard, saying you should have determined whether your arm brace was classified as an arm brace or a stock. So we are mandating that all of those firearms be recalled, and you either replace them or you buy the bullet. So if an individual bought this off the shelf and ATF posts something that says it's a stock now, the individual can just take it off and throw it in the trash. For one thing, ATF doesn't know they have it. They just bought it as an accessory. And so does that kind of answer that?
Well, and I think of it from the retailer's perspective where, you get firearms now because these have been out in the market for a while that are third, fourth, fifth owners. The food chain is broken apart, and these could be factory built guns. And, now you've got people unknowingly owning guns that have restrictions, regulations, or recall notices on it. And it just seems like it's a huge hoop of leaving people hanging out to dry out there as to the legal status of the general population.
Let me just take a few more minutes, Chris. I know that Wiley Ream letter that came out, there's a lot in that letter that isn't absolutely correct. Basically, when they got into an argument with ATF said, well, we'll just classify all of them as pistols and we'll stop the importation and we'll stop everything. So Wiley Ream took that statement and kind of drafted into their letter that says ATF is coming after all of them. And it was just one of those argumentative moments that ATF was trying to show that they had the power. So that discussion's already gone all the way up to the director and DOJ, because if they do that, all of these, from the Draco to the PPSH to every single one of those firearms, we're talking about millions, would be recalled.
Hey, Rick, it even goes further than that, because you think about how many people bought the, lack of a better phrase, 80% lower and made their own. You have all of them out there in possession of people as well, where they put these arm braces on them. So, I mean, it's really an untenable position for ATF, other than, like you say, working with the licensees and telling them to stop what they're doing,
Okay, so we will follow up more on that before Friday and make sure we get something out to everybody on Friday. Our last visit or visitor here to talk is going to be Mike, because Mike, as you know, in the last couple days, and I don't know whether this is election driven or not, but the last couple days we've had, two, I believe, operational security breaches amongst our client base. And, proportionately speaking, that's a lot in one weekend. So have you seen generally an uptick in burglaries outside of what we have been seeing over the past years within the last 2 weeks, let's say?
Yeah, I don't think there's much of an increase over the past. It's just, these last two were smash and grabs. The one most recently Saturday, they probably weren't very sophisticated. They went and just really took old guns from the rental guns. A lot of other more valuable guns were throughout the store. They just quickly came in and took the oldest guns that were most convenient. So what is common, though, is it's apparent that whoever the burglars are, in almost every occasion, they've been in the stores and have scouted things out and know exactly where to go. Because typically like Saturday, they were in and out in 30 seconds, literally 30 seconds. They showed the camera how quickly they were in and out. The one before that, about a minute, and they were trying to smash cases and a lot of other things. So I'd advise your staff to get more vigilant, watch these people that are coming in, not profiling anybody, of course, but, if people are just walking around, not really looking to buy anything seriously, take note of it and, just figure out what time it was in the day. So if you've got CCTV, you can at least point the police to the time so that someone doesn't have to sit through hours of video, approximately the exact time. But with the election coming, nobody can predict how people are going to react. It's been getting really crazy with all the protests and demonstrations and counter protests. I think we can all expect, unless it's a significant landslide, or even if it's not, we're going to see a lot of protests from both sides. So again, if you're in rural areas, you're probably not as likely to get affected by these protests. But if you're in a suburban area, people are going to be nervous. The quick way of getting guns is just do a quick burglary. So I would suggest, if you can, lock up your valuable in a safe or something like that. I know it's a pain to take inventory off the shelves and put it away and put it back out every day. But, for the next week or so, I think it's going to be a pretty tenuous situation, but we really don't know how people are going to react. That's it.
So another operational security issue that's come up privately is that under normal circumstances, so I'm speaking about one of our clients anonymously. They have usually see one or two traces a year. And now in the past couple of months, they've had an uptick of more than 100%, let's say 4, 5, 6 traces. Is that indicative of anything? We all know traces don't necessarily mean it's a crime gun, but is the uptick in traces in any way related to this, Mike? And or Jim, can you explain tracing and what it means?
I think the biggest factor for, Michael addressed the criminal aspect of it. And again, because guns get sold, a second time, a third time. But the biggest concern for a licensee, I would think, with traces is that if you hit a certain number, then you're on that demand program with ATF, where you have to start reporting every quarter what your firearms
Quarter, yep.
are. Yeah. That's the biggest factor. It would be a large increase in that. I forget what the number is a year. It's not that high a number. I want to say something like 15, but that could be wrong. It's a very low number in terms of traces that kick in the demand program. But that for a client would be the big issue. Because guns have such a high turnover, people selling them on their own. I mean, it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. You just have to make sure that you're following the guides and you're following the Law Plus guidelines, that you're doing that second review. You're making sure the 4473 is right, because if it is a gun that's used in a crime, the very first thing that happens is, and it's traced, and they come back to your store, is, was the paperwork completed properly, and was the sale legal? Those are the two big questions that are always asked. And if you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's there, you're probably going to be fine and get through it. I say probably because there's so many lawsuits today that you never know if someone's going to sue for any reason or other, but you're on very, very solid ground if that form has been completed properly and the sale was legal. I don't know, Mike, if you had more to add on that.
Yeah, I would just add, an uptick in traces is just an indicator. It's not proof of anything. However, if you start seeing that the short time from the point of sale to the recovery, the same type of firearm, same person, obviously, then you're probably looking at a firearms, straw purchases. The criminals try and find the easy way out if they can find that they're getting away easily by buying guns from a certain place using a straw purchaser. They're going to keep doing it the same place until ATF comes knocking on the door, and then they'll go somewhere else. So, those are just some indicators that you should pay attention to. If you start seeing a lot of, cheap guns, short time from the purchase to the recovery, those are some of the things you should pay closer attention. But I did forget to say something on the thefts. The first thing ATF is doing in every single one of them is coming in and doing 100% inventory with you. So it's important that you do those regular inventories on your own, because they're going to come in either the day of the burglary or the next day. So you're not going to have much time to try and fix things before that. So just beware that they are going to do it. They may send a couple of IOIs in, but they are going to do 100% inventory.
So Avis, our client relations specialist who works with Brian, is formerly from Ellett Brothers. And Avis, I know you have some insight or some input on traces because you handled that exclusively at Ellett. What are your thoughts on that?
We used to see when there was an uptick, sometimes it was from things like a buyback that was in the area. We'd evaluate, are we seeing where we had sold these to a certain, are they all the same type of guns? Are they going to the same region of the United States or the same state? There were different things we'd look at to see if there was a problem in that area that we could be doing our due diligence about. So that would be my question. What are these requests? Are they coming in lumps? Are they coming one this week, one next week? That's definitely more than most stores are used to. We were used to getting, hundreds of these a day at one point, and until we worked with the automated system, but we still used to get a great deal that we're still double checking with us each and every week. So there's a lot of things that go into those traces. Like you said, it's not just crimes, it's a lot of other things.
Good to know, and good experience on your part. That is basically all we have for today. It's been a lower populated but longer session, a lot of information. Of course, Brian will post the video for if you want to show this to any of your employees, and we will reconvene the first Monday of December, hopefully under a new Trump administration, but if not, things are certainly going to be interesting between now and then, and maybe you'll sell something on Black Friday if you have anything to sell. But in the meantime, everyone stay safe, and thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time around.
Thank you, Kristen.
Bye.
Are we
You're just
off
gonna keep-
recording, Brian?
You're just going to keep